was really clear that he was out of there.
Can you take me back to that day? You describe it in the book.
Yeah, I describe it in the book. And what actually happened is I was in northern New Mexico near Taos, out in front of our adobe house, drinking a cup of tea. And then the car drove up, so behind the house, I heard the door slam, came around the corner of the house, and just said it, blunted it out, that things haven't been going well with us. I'm having an affair with somebody else, and we need to get a divorce. And so then I described
That's kind of stunning.
Yeah, so it was so shocking, I suppose even traumatizing, that I had that experience that I describe, where it was just timeless moment of total, eternal silence.
Because had you suspected an affair?
Looking back, things were really bad between us anyway, but somehow I wanted it to keep going. But it still came as a total out of the blue.
There you are drinking your cup of tea. Your second husband pulls up and says, "This is it. I'm having an affair."
Yeah. So everything fell apart. I just somehow couldn't get it all to come back together. And I think I also say that in the book, which is that I wanted it to come back together. Because for me, happiness seemed to represent just going back to what I had had, which was not very happy, but it represented security and the known and everything. And then this happened, and suddenly I was just out there, and I couldn't get it to come back. It wasn't going to come back. And so I actually had to learn something about being in that space of everything, no ground at all, just groundless,
Were you one of those women who defined your life by that picture, playing that role, having the man, being married, being dependent? Were you one of those people?
Oh, I was definitely one of those people. And so, big lesson for me coming out of it. It took about 3 or more years before I really was through it.
This is
a lot
funny
of
too.
grieving and so forth. But the
I've
big
got the
lesson
1 pound
was
Balas on. 1 pound, 1 pound, 2 pounds total.
I didn't realize how attached I was to having to have somebody else confirm me as being okay. Like, in other words, it didn't come from inside me. It came from someone else's view of me.
Yes.
So when I was 20 years old, I got married the first time. So I went from my family to my first marriage, and then left my first husband, the children's father, for the second husband. And so from the time I was 20 till when I was like 35, I was always like somebody else's person, So all of a sudden I was right out there, and that's what I really learned. I came through it. I don't have that kind of attachment anymore I don't have that need at all. I haven't for a long time. That need to be confirmed by something from the outside in myself.
And that's what your husband walking out on you eventually led to teaching.
That's right.
So that's the amazing thing. Maya Angelou, who was a mentor, mother, teacher for me.
Yeah.
One of the things that she really implanted and imprinted, I think, with so many of us, and me in particular, I remember the day that she was telling me to say thank you when I was going through some crisis, but to say thank you because there's always a rainbow in the clouds. And in many cases, not even just a rainbow. There's a rainbow, there's a whole nother open field waiting for you.
That's right.
So what is the first thing we should do when our lives fall apart? Well, first of all, what you're saying here is, at some point, if you continue to be human, it will fall apart.
It will fall apart. I just gave a graduation speech at Naropa University in Boulder because my granddaughter just graduated from there. And the title of the talk was Fail, Fail Again, Fail Better. So I said, I think the most important thing for you kids going out into the world right now is to know how to fail really well. The skill of knowing how to hold the pain of things happening that you really don't want to be happening. Like training to be able to welcome or allow that kind of unwanted feelings, that pain, the rawness, I call it the rawness.
Training to have unwanted feelings.
Yes, yes.
Okay, something terrible is happening, and then it's an
Practicing.
opportunity. It's like what Maya Angelou said to you.
Yes.
There's something. Something is going to come out of this. Something new. This can end you up in a whole new place, a
Yes.
better place,
Yes.
a much more open
If you know
place.
that.
If you know that.
Yes. You've said that the Buddha has only really taught two things: suffering and the end of suffering. And suffering comes in so many forms. Can you speak to a moment about how we can begin the practice of ending our suffering?
Sure.
That's from this whole thing.
That's why I teach, you know.
That's why you teach. That's the big question.
That's right. I'm here to try. So one way is this practice that I began teaching that we called compassionate abiding. So compassionate abiding is a practice where when you're suffering, then someone might say, first, like locate it in your body and just feel it completely. Feel as completely as you can just what's going on. Then on the in-breath, just breathe it all in, like as if...
Breathe in the suffering.
Breathe it in.
Or the discontent, or
That whole unwanted.
Unwanted. That's what you mean. That is. I just want to clarify for our audience, because when I first started reading Buddhist material and hearing about the Buddhist teachings about suffering, I was thinking, well, am I suffering? I don't know if I'm suffering, because I used to think of suffering as suffering.
Right.
That's right.
Like your childhood.
Like your child.
Your childhood was suffering.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, but then you might say, well, not now.
Not now.
My lovely life.
Yeah, but you suffer in different ways.
Yeah.
Banking with Capital One helps you keep more money in your wallet with no fees or minimums on checking accounts and no overdraft fees. Just ask the Capital One bank guy. It's pretty much all he talks about, in a good way. He'd also tell you that this podcast is his favorite podcast, too. Oh, really? Thanks, Capital One bank guy. What's in your wallet? Terms apply. See CapitalOne.com/bank. Capital One NA, member FDIC.
The word suffering is usually associated with something tragic like war, poverty, or the death of a loved one. When Pema uses the word suffering, however, she's also talking about times that are disruptive, that give us anxiety or despair, like losing a job, a stressful conflict in your family, or when you believe life isn't going your way. Every time you have something that is unwanted, that makes you uncomfortable, where you really don't want to go
Even
there and deal with.
Insecure? Yeah.
That's what we mean by suffering.
Yeah.
Yes.
And another way it's sometimes translated as discontent, you know.
Discontent.
Yeah.
That's the perfect word.
Yeah.
How do we end
So
our discontent?
there's that discontent, and you recognize it, and you wish to be free of it.
Exactly.
So instead of running away or eating something, drinking something, whatever, or yelling at someone, instead you breathe it in. And sometimes I use the image of, it's as if you breathe it into your heart and your heart just gets bigger and bigger. Every time you breathe in, the heart gets bigger and bigger, so that no matter how bad it feels, you just give it more space. So when you breathe in, you open to it, I guess you could say.
Oh, I
And
get
when
this.
you breathe out, you just send out a lot of space.
Okay, so what you're really saying is, and I think this is so important for anybody going through anything, you have to first accept that what has happened has really happened. So that breathing in is like being with it and fully accepting
That's right.
this moment instead of trying to resist it and push it away.
Sometimes I say, what does your heart feel
That's
like?
what I try to
People
tell
say,
my
"It
friends
feels
all
like,
the time.
like a rock.
Just pray that this
What does
feeling
your
will be
stomach feel
over
like? It
soon.
feels like a knot.
That
you know,
you won't feel like shit forever.
It's as if my whole body was clenched fists and like this because
Just
I'm
knowing
so
that it's
miserable.
temporary and
It's
just
like,
hoping that
okay,
it'll go
so
away.
breathe in and just let that heart open, let the stomach open. It's as if when you breathe in, you were going like that, you know.
Okay.
I surrender.
I surrender.
You know.
I know that.
And you breathe in deeply, you breathe out deeply, and if you want to just do 6 in-breaths where you emphasize that, go right ahead, you know. But usually it's on the medium of the breath, breathing it in kind of allowing it, welcoming it, even embracing it even. I mean, you can use whatever word works, you know.
That's called compassionate abiding.
Yeah, compassionate abiding with yourself.
Yeah.
And at
me?
a certain point, I mean, sometimes right away, sometimes a long time down the line, I have people say, you know, when you breathe in, you could recognize that all over the world right now and in the past and in the future, people are going to feel exactly what you're feeling now. The feeling of being rejected, the feeling of being unloved, the feeling of insecurity, the feeling of fear, rage, whatever it is you're feeling. And human beings have always felt this and always will. And so you breathe in for everyone, that they could welcome
Also
it, that
knowing
they
that you're not alone in
say,
that
I
feeling.
haven't done anything wrong, embrace it.
Somebody else
So
feels
you
like
see,
this
it becomes
same thing right here, right now.
by really knowing or having that kind of deep friendship with yourself,
Yes.
it translates into being merciful for others, to being compassionate for others.
And the reason why I see it as so important is, again, the first step in being able to move forward is to be able to fully accept where you are in any situation. You got to first accept it.
That's
So
right.
running away from it is the exact
11
opposite of
minutes in, my
acceptance.
right arm
So
is definitely getting tired.
everybody
My
tries
left
to run
arm
away
is
from it.
not.
Yeah, that's almost like knee-jerk reaction.
Yes.
So this is doing something else.
Just be with it. That's the first thing you
Just
need to do.
be with it. Yeah.
That sounds so hard because that's the opposite of what you want to
Okay,
do.
because
You want it to go away.
I spend a lot of time just trying to encourage people that they have the capacity to feel pain or unpleasant feelings or suffering, whatever you want to call it. Just allow yourself to be fully human. Human beings don't just feel good. Have
Right.
you noticed that? And animals too, you know, we don't just feel good. The richness of life includes the whole tapestry of good and bad and happy and sad. And so, but happy, good, winning, all of that, people don't have too much problem with, you know, but it's as soon as they even get near something that feels uncomfortable, substance abuse comes from that. All kinds of addictions come from that. I think all violence and domestic violence and about violence to kids and all that. I think it all comes from that. Everyone, that's a sad thing. Everyone's trying to feel good and they do terrible things to feel
To make
good.
themselves, everybody trying to make themselves feel good, to quiet the noise that's here that they can't be with.
That's right.
And they reach out externally to do that.
That's right.
One of the things I like so much is at the very beginning of When Things Fall Apart, you talk about fear. And I love this quote. You say, fear is a natural reaction to moving closer to the truth.
Woo!
I went, whoa. Whoa. Come
Whoa.
on, Miss Pema.
Come on, Miss Pema.
Yes, come on, Miss Pema. Fear
Did I
is
say that? That is good.
That is good. That is good. Fear is a natural reaction to moving closer to the truth.
I guess what I meant by that, I mean, you know, sometimes the
Oh,
mind...
you're like me. Sometimes I see something and it'll say Oprah Winfrey and I go, did I say that? That made more sense than I thought. Yeah, that's good. But no, that was powerful. Fear is a natural reaction.
I'm moving closer to the truth.
Yeah.
And I think probably partially, in any way, what I meant by that was that fear comes with not knowing what's going to happen.
The unknown.
Yeah, you don't know what's going to happen next. But fear, in fact, in the Shambhala teachings, I'm part of, the lineage that I'm part of is called Shambhala. And so one of the Shambhala teachings is if you don't know the nature of fear, if you don't know what fear feels like, then you can never be fearless.
I agree.
How's that for a quote? Not knowing the nature of fear, you can never be fearless.
It's true.
Oh, that's good. That's good.
If you never feel it, how can you
Taking it in.
know how to process
And I
it
think
and
people
move
need
it
to know. I
forward
remember on the Oprah show,
and
I've been talking
overcome
about
it?
these principles and practices for a long
never
time.
felt
And I
it,
remember
which-
talking to a gentleman on the show, and he said, I ain't afraid of nothing. Because a lot of people think of it as, activated physical fear. But when we're speaking of fear, and those of you who are super solars obviously know this, but if you're a first timer, we're talking about all of the ramifications and manifestations of fear.
Yeah.
Anxiety is fear.
Yeah, anxiety.
Jealousy is fear.
That's right.
Low self-esteem is fear. Rage is nothing but fear.
That's right.
Rage is fear to the 10th power.
That's right. Do you think loneliness is fear?
Yes, I do.
Mm-hmm.
I hadn't thought of it before.
Well,
I love a moment that I'd never thought. What a great question. Do I think loneliness is fear?
Get my little flyways down, but
well, you have the rest of your life to
burn
think
my
about
forehead.
that.
Cool.
I'll call you. My first response. My first response is yes, because as a little girl,
Yep.
I think I was. I mean, I did this exercise with John Bradshaw once, who was. He was a master teacher on the inner child. Yeah. And he did this exercise where you go back to walk yourself, your 6-year-old self, home from school, and get to the door and look through the window, and what do you see? Yeah. Look inside, and what do you see? So it's the only time I ever felt overwhelmed by a sense of loneliness. You know,
as a little one.
As a little girl.
Yeah.
Speaking of lonely, can I ask you, have you ever been lonely?
Yeah, I used to be lonely.
You used to be lonely.
But the last time I remember being lonely was maybe about 20 years ago, when I had something happen where everybody left me, so to speak, and I was all alone in a remote cabin, and the feeling of loneliness was just desperate. And so I started calling up my friends. First, I called up a man friend of mine, then I called up a woman friend of mine, and they were both very helpful and compassionate. And then I put down the phone and I said, you know,
It made it worse. And
actually,
I got a burn on my
nobody
forehead.
can help you out of this. You just have to be lonely and just relate to it. And somehow after that, I was never lonely again.
Never lonely.
Because I realized that you didn't. Those other people weren't really
They can't fix it.
They can't fix it.
They can't fix it.
No.
Yeah.
And then I thought about death. You know, that's going to be all alone. So might as well be good and ready
do it
for
alone.
that.
Yeah.
Certainly do. I mean, you can be
yours.
surrounded, but it's you go by yourself.
Go by yourself. So what do you think death is?
What do I think death is? Well, personally, myself, I'm not afraid of it because I think of it as a transition to...
What happens when we die?
Well, I'm going to say what I feel, but I also always like to say, this is what I think happens, but I'm ready to be surprised. If it's different, I can say, hey, I got it wrong, you know? But I think, just the way you go to sleep at night, and there's this whole dream world, I think when you die, you enter into the whole
wake up?
I think everything continues.
I do too.
And then I think you end up getting born again and life goes on.
And I do think merrily, life is but a dream.
Yeah, I do too.
Pema Chodron often talks about a phenomenon that Buddhists call Shenpa. It's a Tibetan word for those obsessive feelings and urges that we just can't seem to release. Like the resentment that remains long after somebody has been unkind to us, or getting overwhelmed by frustration when we fail, that craving for a cigarette or something sweet to ease a stressful day, that's a Shenpa. It's how we get hooked or taken over by a negative experience. So you lose yourself in whatever that moment is.
That's right.
I lost my job. I didn't get the grades I thought I was going to have.
Yeah.
I didn't get the...
Disappointment.
You get taken over by that and
Right.
feel that now you are that.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
That's what Shenpa is.
Yeah, Shenpa is that feeling of being hooked. So, for instance, I was just talking to someone yesterday who's going through a crisis. And I said, first of all, remove yourself from the situation, by which I meant just go for a walk, you know, get out when the thing's getting intense. So just suppose you lost your job. So the same thing would be true. Give yourself some space.
Yeah.
And make it a priority to give yourself literally some space. Go to a library if you have to, you know, or a park or somewhere where no one's going to talk to you. Yeah. You're not going to talk to them. And be right there with the feeling without trying to run away from it. It would be like go and walk on the beach with the feeling.
Yeah.
Be alone with it. Yeah. And then this is the hard part, and this is where meditation actually really comes in as a big help. Notice your thoughts, and notice what you're saying to yourself, and notice how it's all about either about you're wrong or they're wrong. Somehow you're blaming yourself. There's that self-hatred, self-denigration, real
What did I do? What did I do? What did I do?
Really feeling bad about yourself.
Why me? Why me?
Or just strike out. Blame the husband, blame the boss, blame the teacher who gave you the grade, or, So notice that, and then with meditation, you actually train and notice your thinking, come back to just being present. Notice your thinking, just come back to being present.
We call that here on Super Soul, come back to the observer, observe the thought, and then be aware that you are the observer and that you're not the thought.
That's right.
Yeah.
And come back to just the immediacy of your experience, rather than coming back to being someone like the observer. You see what I'm saying? Like, it's more like not so much about self as about just genuine experiencing of the present, like touching this chair arm, feeling the warmth of the cup.
Yes. So be aware of everything in the present moment.
Yeah.
Bring yourself back to present moment.
That's right. So this is the interesting thing when you turn toward the unwanted, unpleasant, insecure feelings. It transforms you in some kind of way. What I think of it.
You own them.
That's right.
Literally own them.
That's right.
Yeah.
And what I think really happens is people connect with the fact that they are basically good. They're basically good. They're not basically messed up or broken goods, or that there's something fundamentally wrong with you.
Yes, but then the next question becomes, I'm a good person. Why did this happen to me?
And I know some people lose their faith around issues like this because their prayers.
Because God, you didn't do what I asked you to do.
So I would just say, nothing wrong has actually happened here. You have lost your job. Life is pointing you in a different direction, like another opportunity is opened up here for you. And at the very least, and this is probably the most important thing, is this is an opportunity to really start to welcome those kind of really stuck,
practice.
Activated, painful kind of feelings. And
it's happening so you will go there.
Yeah.
It's happening so you will go there.
Yeah. So for me and a lot of people I've encountered, the losing the job, the failure coming in any kind of form, what it really gets to is at the core of it, you feel like you really messed up and you are fundamentally a mess up.
A mess, yeah.
Yeah. And
but that's an ego thing, isn't it?
That's the crux of ego. That's the main shempa. The main attachment is to that.
Yes.
To that. But if you just say, let's make friends with the ego rather than try to obliterate it or call it bad.
Yeah.
And making friends with it means know it 100% completely. Don't reject it. And believe it or not, that's how you begin to become a more egoless person. Because the only reason we do this grasping and fixating and all of this, which we call ego, if I'm making sense here,
You're making sense.
is because we feel we have something to protect. We don't want to go to that place. We don't want to feel that way.
Yeah.
And this is why I teach, is because if people can hold or embrace or allow or get their nervous system so they can handle the suffering, the uncomfortableness, the insecurity, then the discontent, then there's a chance of letting the evolution happen.
Banking with Capital One helps you keep more money in your wallet with no fees or minimums on checking accounts and no overdraft fees. Just ask the Capital One bank guy. It's pretty much all he talks about, in a good way. He'd also tell you that this podcast is his favorite podcast, too. Oh, really? Thanks, Capital One bank guy. What's in your wallet? Terms apply. See CapitalOne.com/